Today, I have with me an entrepreneur from our TrulySmall community, one of the founders of Ripple Consulting, Hannah. Hannah, welcome. Why don't you start off telling us a little bit about who you are and how you got started with Ripple Consulting?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Justin. Like you said, my name is Hannah DeVries, and I am one of the co-founders of Ripple Consulting. I founded the organization with Marisol Martinez, and then we also have a consultant on staff, Susie Dixon, and as well as Victoria Gibbs. So we have a couple of us. It's still a small team, but we've grown a little bit more since we first started, which is super exciting. And so...
Oh, no, I was sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, why don't you tell us a little bit how you got started? How did Ripple Consulting come to be?
Mm-hmm. So Marisol and I, the co-founders, first started getting involved or starting racial equity, anti-racism work when we were working in child welfare together at a nonprofit organization, and quickly saw a lot of disparities that were happening for children in the child welfare system, especially in terms of racial disparities, that Black and brown kids were disproportionately in the system, touched by the system, whether it be child protective services or foster care. We specifically worked in foster care, but we saw even like the rates of removal higher. We had about, just to give an example, it was about 50%. So 50 white kids, 50% Black and brown kids. And that's very disproportionate to the percentage of, I believe in Kent County where we worked, it's only about 13% African American. So pretty disproportionate when we're talking about that. And a slightly higher percentage for Hispanic Latino community, but still a disproportionate amount of kids that were in foster care, right? Mm-hmm. And we began to see how policies and practices were playing out, and there was nothing in place at our current organization to really address that. We had a DEI, which stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, team that was part of our larger branch, but they really weren't very active at that time, and they maybe offered trainings once or twice a year, and it just felt very inadequate. And so we saw a need and started to try and address it internally. Started organizing and providing space for conversations and trainings. We got equipped through a 2.5-day workshop called Understanding Racism through an organization called CORE. That was an offshoot of Crossroads, which is based in Chicago, Illinois at the time. And really that helped us get kind of a shared language and understanding of what we were talking about. When we say racism, systemic racism, when we say racial inequities, when we say anti-racism, what do all those things mean, right? Mm-hmm. Got that shared foundation and started trying to implement some of the things that they talked to us about in our sphere of influence. And we're able to do a lot of like grassroots organizing and development within our program, and really push to get it beyond just our department. But we're met with mostly closed doors for a while. And finally, it was probably 1.5 years, 2 years into the process, we got a couple of upper management people on board that helped us kind of revitalize that initial DEI team. Mm-hmm. And so that sort of began to reorganize. We helped redevelop it a lot along with the leader of that team. And by the time everything was said and done, and by the time both of us actually left the organization, that initial 2.5-day workshop was required for all management in the organization and strongly encouraged for workers. And it was required within the foster care department. And then there were three total teams of anti-racism teams throughout the organization, with some starts for another team beginning as well. And so we learned a lot, right? Like that wasn't a linear process. There was a lot of trial and error and starts and stops and hitting closed doors. But a lot of lessons were learned. And so we began to want to like kind of apply that to what not only our sphere of influence, but for other organizations, right? And so we both were connected with CORE, that same organization that did the workshops for us for a while. And I'm still connected with that organization as well. And really quickly realized, so CORE, which stands for Communities Organizing for Racial Equity, primarily works with faith-based organizations, so faith-based nonprofits and churches. And that obviously is a huge need. And we saw that there was a need for that in our community beyond faith-based organizations. So how can we build on the training as well as provide some consulting services? Because we just did a lot of trial and error that, hey, we found this language, but there was no one the whole time to walk alongside us. And so we realized that was a huge need in our community and began to develop some consulting services to work with organizations. And that organization CORE also developed some along the same time, but again, predominantly within the faith-based sphere. And so it became clear that this was a need to not only educate, but also learn how to apply that knowledge that we had received to actually push for systemic change in organizations. Awesome. So that was kind of the need, right? That's what we saw, and had lots of conversations from there, right?
How did those go? And
they went well. It was one of those things where, okay, so it's a long process, and it was also like a little freaky of like, we don't see this need, so we can't necessarily join with an organization that's currently doing this, or this need being met. So how do we do that? Do we start our own thing? Are we equipped for that? I think there was a lot of like kind of imposter syndrome, even in those first conversations of like, I don't know that we have the knowledge to do this. And slowly but surely just continued to have conversations and realized that like, we're not going to know unless we give it a shot. So then we decided to form an LLC and submitted everything and got our approval the first week of March 2020. Oh, wow. Which most people know is right when COVID kind of took off and quarantines began.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like a hard timeline. You have all these conversations, you're all ready to go, you're all motivated to get started, and then a big obstacle hits you or gets in your way. What was that time like for you? What was that process? How did you get through it?
So yeah, lots of doubt. I had just left my full-time job in child welfare to pursue this full-time about 3 months prior. And Marisol was still in another job, but there was just a lot of uncertainty of like what this would look like. And so it gave a lot of time to really reflect on, am I really going to do this? Are we really going to make this happen? And then started to slowly realize like, oh, there's a lot that goes into organizing a business, advertising it, getting our social media up and running, getting a website going, all these different things. And so in hindsight, I was very grateful because it gave a lot of time as we were all stuck at home to really take time to develop a lot of those things, and really help us find clarity of vision of like, what did we want to offer and who are we? And so from there, we actually, even though we had our LLC in March, we didn't launch our website and social media until the summer of 2020. So it would have been like July and August is when things started to go live. So it was slow, but it was intentional. And I appreciated that intentionality because of that.
Yeah. I mean, we all need the time to kind of sit down, marinate with our thoughts, and really make sure that we're providing the best services for our clients or customers, whoever it may be. What's changed since that time? I mean, a lot has changed, but what are the biggest lessons from that point until maybe today?
Yeah, a lot has changed. I think we have slowly found our footing and we've slowly found our voice, I think is some of the biggest things. We are now working with a few clients with consulting, and that's been really exciting. Like the first time we heard from someone that said, hey, we want to use your services, we were like, oh, wow, people actually like want to use us. And that was really cool. And it's mostly been word of mouth so far. And there's been a few now that it's like, oh, I wonder how they heard about us. So that's been kind of cool to see. And so it's slow, it's gradual, and I've been really grateful for the slowness because it's helped us be very intentional with every move. Mm-hmm. Obviously, slowness isn't the most enjoyable for a business when trying to make income, but it's helped with we are going to provide really quality services and really intentional services, and we can really meet the needs of every client and really have a lot of time to build intentional relationships to provide lasting and sustainable change to organizations. And so I think some of the biggest learnings and also changes is we've learned how much relationship goes into the work that we do. When we're talking about racial injustices and then racial equity justice trainings and consulting, it is all full of really tough topics and really tough conversations. And we've learned really quickly, and knew this prior, but it's come out that like so much of the divisiveness is already in society, right? And we get scared because like, if I bring up a divisive topic, what is that going to do? And how's that going to play out? But realizing that it's already there and there was already this internal tension sometimes can just alleviate and gets this like sort of this like flow of like, okay, thank you for seeing my perspective and that this has been in the air we've been breathing for a long time. And the only way we're going to change anything is if we're aware of it, we recognize the problem, name it, and then seek to change it. And then I think the other change / new development, kind of where we're headed, is we've realized another need that's not been met is as the DEI anti-racist professionals field grows, it's becoming a field. I don't think it's like super formal, but there's a lot of need for that. There's a lot of organizations out there that are realizing the way we've been doing things is not equitable for everyone. We want to create a culture of belonging for everyone, and we haven't, right? Like there's times when just like we see a disproportionate number of kids impacted by policies and child welfare, we also see a disproportionate number of adults that certain fields cannot retain people of color in their organizations because of the culture and because of various barriers and stuff. And so we've started to realize, like, as this field grows, DEI professionals are kind of like figuring it out as they go. There's no standard of practice. There's no code of ethics. There's no like, this is how we do business. And we realize that needs to happen. And so I think that is sort of our next direction, in addition to still working with organizations, because we want to keep relevant. We want to keep like trying on the things that we're learning to make sure that they're still relevant for organizations. But how can we do that both and we want to support DEI professionals like ourselves to create some standards, to create that common shared language and foundation that's just so crucial and was so helpful for Marisol and I in the development, that allows us to continue to support people and make this work sustainable for years to come.
That's awesome. So it sounds like a lot of future plans in the works. There's the training and consulting that you're currently doing, as well as this education portion that you're looking to build for the future.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think we're still trying to formalize what that will look like. I know we've talked about some support spaces where DEI specialists can come and just let's talk about what's going on, what are our struggles we're facing, how is racism playing out in our own lives, how has that gotten internalized in us, and how is that, like, that culture, again, like it's pervasive, and so it plays out in everyone's lives. How is that preventing me from making equitable decisions for people, and how is that playing out in my decision making, and how can I overcome that in order to provide the best services for people and provide the best support? Yeah, so I think lots of exciting ideas. Most of our team is, we love to brainstorm and come up with lots of ideas and dream big. And it's just been cool to be, we hold the reins so we can dream and give it a shot, which is so cool.
Yeah. I mean, that's the entrepreneur dream. That's what we all want to do. Build our own thing and make it come true in our vision, the way that we want to see it. That's awesome.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much. I want to give you the opportunity to have other businesses or other people connect with Ripple Consulting. How can we find you? How can we support you? Are there any events coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, like I said, we have social media. We are on Instagram at Ripple, RIPPLE Consulting LLC. So our full name, plug it in there, super simple. On Facebook at the same, Ripple Consulting LLC. And then our website is rippleconsultingllc.org. So we try to stay pretty consistent. If you go to our website, rippleconsultingllc.org, that connects you to everything too. We have links on there for our Facebook, our Instagram. You can also shoot us an email at the contact us link so that you can learn a little bit more about us or want to get more information that's not on the website. One of the things that we do have coming up is it's sort of a hybrid of a training and support space. It's called a cohort. And we are launching that in January of 2023. It's going to run from January 9th through June 5th. And it's going to be every other Monday from 4:30 to 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. And that is, you can learn more about it on our website and how to register and everything, but it's really a space to provide support for people that have been in this work before, whether they're professionals or just trying to develop themselves. It's primarily designed for white people, because as white people in the DEI space, we have a very specific role to recognize how we have been socialized as superior and default, and how we need to overcome a lot of those things, so that it's not, we're not intentionally or unintentionally doing harm with our actions. And so it's a really awesome space where we're going to do a lot of delving deep into how we've been socialized and how we can unlearn certain things. As well as providing some really good resources and material that will have space to really process through. And the hope is that as we talk and process together, the more and more we'll learn and the more we'll grow as individuals. And so that's the main event that we have coming up. We'll have some other trainings. We're actually working on some professional development, such as like implicit bias and such trainings to offer it in the future, but those aren't quite ready. So those are things that, hey, just stay tuned for our website and our social media, and we'll update as those happen.
Amazing. Well, let us know. We're going to share it with our audience as well. And can't wait to see what's in the future. I just want to thank you for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Really appreciate it, Hannah.
Yeah, thank you, Justin, and thanks Truly Small for providing this platform. We really appreciate it.